Hello everyone and welcome in to the Mid-Season Football Report. I am your host, Andrew Nepsund. Now at the beginning of this year, second year for head coach Tommy Tuberville, there were a lot of positions that needed filling. Seth Deggy stepped in at quarterback, Eric Stevens stepped in as a new starting running back in place of Baron Batch, and also a new defensive scheme came in for new defensive coordinator Chad Glasgow. And without further ado, we're going to go through a little bit of the highlights and what has happened so far in this interesting year. First, with the home opener, Texas Tech took on the Texas State Bobcats and beat them by a 50-10 score. Now they did get off to a slow start with being down 10-0 after that first quarter, but with the help of Darren Moore, who pulled in 221 yards on 12 receptions and even a touchdown, they went all over the Texas State Bobcats. Next, on the road in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they faced the New Mexico Lobos and just pretty much destroyed them by a count of 59-13. Darren Moore once again had a great game with 9 receptions, 118 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And Seth Deggy, let's not forget about him in this game too. He tied a school record by completing his first 15 passes en route to finishing 40 for 44 for 405 yards and 5 touchdowns. And that, folks, is a 91% completion rate, an NCAA record for quarterbacks with at least 40 completions. The Red Raiders then came back to face former WAC champion of last year, the Nevada Wolfpack. They beat them barely by a score of 35-34. The defense in this game did not look that great as they gave up 562 yards, but came up big in the last couple of minutes of the final quarter as they held Nevada to 2 consecutive field goals. Also to note, Moore was injured in the first half and did not return. The Red Raiders, they faced a 28-14 third quarter deficit, but it was overcome with 44 seconds left in the game as Seth Deggy found wide receiver Eric Ward in the back of the corner of the end zone for the touchdown. Eric Stevens also racked up 134 yards on the ground along with 2 touchdowns on 26 carries. Next week, they went into Lawrence, Kansas and faced off against the Kansas Jayhawks and came out of that with a win as well to go 4-0 on the year, 45-34. Now, once again, as it was in the previous week, they were down by a big margin to the team. They were down 20-0 in the first quarter, but once again came back for that second straight week. Deggy went 29-46 for 366 yards, 3 touchdowns, and just 1 pick. After the upset in Kansas, Tech came back home to face off for the last time in the Big 12 Conference against the Texas A&M Aggies, who will be leaving for the SEC, unfortunately, next year. They lost 45-40 to this number 24 ranked team. Now, they did lose, even though they outgained them by over 100 yards. Deggy on the day went 44 for 66, 391 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A&M Cyrus Gray and Ryan Tannehill combined for 3 rushing touchdowns. And then A&M, that pivotal turning point in the game, when the Red Raiders were trying to come back, they blocked a field goal and returned it for a touchdown. Eric Stevens also left the game in the middle of the third quarter with a dislocated knee, and he is now done for the year. But before he left, he was able to rack up his 4th 100-yard rushing game. Very promising for Stevens the Jr., and we'll look forward to having him again, fresh and ready to go next year, his senior year. Then, the very next week, they had another home game, a big one against the Kansas State Wildcats, who were then ranked number 17th. They lost 41-34, and this honestly was a game they really should have won. Deggy threw for a career-high 461 yards, but also a career-high in interceptions with 3 of them. Kansas State blocked 2 Tech field goals throughout the game. And they outgained Kansas State by 250 yards on offense, which is just remarkable, and yet they still come up short. Then, as y'all saw last week, the Texas Tech Red Raiders upset the number 3 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. And this win snapped a 39-game winning streak at home for OU. Their last home loss, just to put it in perspective for everyone out there, was 2005 on opening day to TCU. Seth Deggy had a career day, 441 yards, 4 touchdowns, and most importantly, no interceptions at all after throwing 3 the previous week against Kansas State. And also Alex Torres had a career performance as he pulled in 3 of the 4 touchdown passes from Deggy. And now for the Daily Toreador Mid-Season Football Report, we have RaiderPower.com Managing Editor Joshua Koch here with us today. And Josh, it's nice to have you back on the show, sir.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, now first off, you saw that game last week in Norman. What can you tell us about that upset? What does this do for Texas Tech for a football team and Tommy Tuberville as a head coach?
Well, for Tommy Tuberville, what it does is it gives him a credible win finally. It's something that he's been lacking really here in his time at Texas Tech. Now, granted, it came in his second season, which that's great to have because having that win, hopefully it'll get those bandwagon fans onto the bandwagon for Texas Tech, especially this game against Iowa State coming up. But last weekend, what we really saw was a Tech offense that fired on all cylinders finally. Saw the running game really take off. DeAndre Washington, 86 yards rushing last week alongside Aaron Crawford, who's really that big bruising running back that Texas Tech has needed to replace Barron Batch. The loss of Eric Stevens was huge, but now they've shown that with the combination of DeAndre Washington and Aaron Crawford, that solid running game is there. And, of course, you can't say enough about Seth Dagey, what he's been able to do, 441 yards passing last week, 4 touchdowns. And that came off after a game where he looked really just out of sync, 3 interceptions, a fumble, and he recovered and helped lead Texas Tech to an upset over Oklahoma.
Now, after this performance by Seth Dagey on national television, ABC Primetime TV, would you say maybe he's deserving to be in the running for the Davey O'Brien Trophy, which, by the way, is the award for best quarterback in NCAA Division I football?
Well, he deserves to be in the running. He is one of the 16 finalists coming into this week alongside 4 other Big 12 quarterbacks, which is phenomenal, having 5 quarterbacks out of the 16 coming from the Big 12. You know, he's in the running for it. Then the question is, will he be able to be a finalist? You know, it's going to be a tough award to win this year. You got the likes of Andrew Luck in the country. You got Landry Jones at Oklahoma. Even though he had a rough game last weekend, he's still there producing for that team, led him to be number 3 in the country. But the biggest question is, does Seth Dagey have enough to continue these kinds of numbers? Which, if he does, you know, the Davey O'Brien Trophy will be great, but then you start talking, is he good enough for the Heisman Trophy, one of the most prestigious in the country? And there's already 3 Big 12 quarterbacks in that running for that as well.
Very true, very true. Now, moving on to a little segment that we like to do called Report Card. What we're going to do, just like school, we're going to report on every single aspect of Texas Tech. Offense, defense, special teams. First off, offense, the passing game.
Passing game, you got to give him an A+ right now. This has been unbelievable. Really, you got to think of the word air raid offense again. It's really what the Big 12 has become, a big passing offense this year. And you got to give him an A+ right now because of also the fact that Seth Dagey's been able to pass the ball around to 9 different wide receivers, including himself. 1 reception on the season. So it's been a great offense to watch. And if Darren Moore can get back and be fully healthy again, we saw him a little bit in the Oklahoma game. Tommy Tuberville talked about how he wasn't able to really leap off, really get a good jump off that ankle. And if he can come back healthy, I think that's going to be a big weapon for Texas Tech, but an A+ for the passing game so far.
Indeed. Moving over to the running game.
Running game, you know, you got to give him just about a B- right now, just because of the fact Eric Stevens isn't there. If Eric Stevens was still healthy, you got to give him an A+. But Eric Stevens, with his loss, he had 855 rushing yards, close to a 1,000-yard season. But now, looking at them, they've started to build up. They had some questions at running back, but now I think they've found that combination of Aaron Crawford and DeAndre Washington, a freshman. By any means, he's going to be great for Texas Tech. You can see him being the next Eric Stevens in the next 4 years. Just imagine what he's going to be like when he's a junior. And the good thing is we get Eric Stevens back next year for his senior year.
In defense.
Defensively for Tech, you got to give him just about a C+ right now. You haven't really seen this season them really be that strong defense except for against Oklahoma. You can't just take one game and say, oh yeah, it's an A+ defense right now just because they stopped a number 3 team in the country. Let's see what they can do this week against a running quarterback. That's been their biggest trouble, is stopping a running quarterback, stopping a dual threat quarterback. Thank goodness Landry Jones wasn't really a running quarterback. There's a couple times he had to run last weekend, but then he would slide down, and he's not really a quarterback that's going to take off on you. But this weekend going to Iowa State, it's going to be a running quarterback, and see how they do this week. So I think after this week's game against Iowa State, you can give more of a fair grade.
I'm anxious to hear this one. Special teams.
Got to give them a D+. It's been a rough season for special teams. Back-to-back games, A&M and Kansas State, where they had field goals blocked against A&M. They had 1 taken back for a touchdown, 2 blocked against Kansas State. Kickoff coverage, not good against K-State either. They let a freshman run one back 100 yards on him. Before that, he had only had 1 kick return on the season for 10 yards, and then he goes off for a 100-yard return. So a lot of questions in the special teams area. Like Tommy Tuberville's always said, he said you have to have good defense, you have to have good offense, and you have to have good special teams to put together a championship-caliber team.
Now, we go into predictions for the rest of the year. Josh, what do you think our final record will be before the postseason? appearance?
Before, it's going to be tough. The second half, after the first half of the season, when they were 4-2, I was thinking, you're looking at the second half of the season, when are they going to get a win? Who are they going to get a win from? Because they had to play Oklahoma. They had to play Oklahoma State. They had to play a Baylor team that's just been on fire, and it always gives Tech trouble. You know, having just 5 more games left this season, you look at it, they're 5-2 right now. Could they finish 10-2? Yeah, sure, if it's a miracle season. 8 wins is a good number to reach for the regular season. That's a good number for this team to get to. You know, it's going to include a couple wins over some tough teams. They got to go to Austin still. They have to play Oklahoma State here still. So there's still a lot of football to be played. We'll see where they finish, but I think an 8-win season is good for this team.
Definitely, indeed. Bowl game.
Bowl game, they're going to make a bowl game. There's no question about it. Who they're going to play, I don't know. Are they going to make the Alamo Bowl? Are they going to make the Cotton Bowl? What bowl it's going to be? No telling. There's like 50 of them. So we could just, you know, they're not going to make the national championship. That's not going to happen. We can knock that one out. We can probably knock out any of the BCS games as well. But they're going to make a bowl game. They're going to continue that streak. If they win this weekend and they beat Iowa State, they'll be the 19th consecutive season they've become bowl eligible. So, and that is ranked 4th in the country among active bowl streaks. So we'll see if this Red Raider team can keep it going, but they're going to be in a bowl game, no question.
Now, speaking of rankings, Texas Tech is currently ranked 20th in the BCS poll, 19th in the AP. Josh, do you think we can uphold this ranking in the top 25 for the rest of the year?
The rest of the year, it's going to be hard because the thing about Texas Tech, if you looked in the past, when Texas Tech gets ranked, it's very easy for this team to fall out of that poll because we've seen in the past they get ranked and they lose one game, all of a sudden they're just dropped out of the poll. They're not like a University of Texas that's always left in those polls. It's sad to say, but Texas Tech this weekend they're going to keep it going. Then next weekend they got to go to Texas. They got to play down in Austin, and if that ranking keeps getting higher and higher, the environment down in Austin is going to get tougher and tougher. So there's a good chance they'll keep it. There's a lot of tough games left to play. You know, they'll definitely keep it if they upset Oklahoma State here in Lubbock in a couple weeks.
Well, that's all we have for this time around. Until next time, I'm Andrew Nepsund. This is Joshua Koch. We'll see you later.